Good morning to tennis fans tuning in from every corner of the globe. You are locked into the ultimate deep dive analysis where we don't just read the scores, we dissect the anatomy of the match point by point, stat by stat, strategy by strategy. I'm your host, and today we are dedicating our entire broadcast to a singular defining moment from the hard courts of the Middle East. We are talking about the Abu Dhabi Open, we are talking about the round of 32, and most importantly, we are talking about a clash of cultures, a clash of rising trajectories, and a clash of pure baseline grit. It was the pride of the Philippines, Alex Eala, squaring off against the history-making sensation from Turkey, Zeynep Sönmez. If you've been following the narrative of women's tennis in the early stages of this 2026 season, you know that this matchup was not just another line on the draw sheet. This was a confrontation between two young women who are actively rewriting the tennis history books for their respective nations. On one side, you have Eala, fresh off a campaign at the Southeast Asian Games, carrying the weight and the hopes of millions of Filipinos who see her as the first legitimate global tennis superstar from their archipelago. On the other side, Sönmez, a player who just weeks ago in Melbourne became the first Turkish woman to reach the third round of the Australian Open, shattering ceilings and proving that she belongs on the biggest stages in the world. So when these two walked out onto the hard courts in Abu Dhabi, the air was thick with implication. The scoreline will tell you it ended 6-4, 6-3 in favor of Alexandra Eala. But that scoreline, that is just the cover of the book. Today, we are going to read every single page. We are going to look at the 66% first serve percentages. We are going to scrutinize the breakpoint conversion rates, 6 out of 12 for Eala. We are going to talk about the zero aces from Sönmez and what that tells us about her tactical limitations on the day. We are going to break down the geometry of the court, the psychology of the big points, and the sheer physical toll of a match where every rally felt like a statement of intent. This is not a highlight reel. This is a comprehensive audit of a victory that might just be the launching pad for Alexandra Eala's assault on the top 40. Settle in, grab your coffee or your hydration, because we are going deep. This is the full story of Eala versus Sönmez. To understand why this 6-4, 6-3 result happened, we have to look at the statistical profile of the match, because the numbers here are screaming a very specific story. The narrative of this match was defined by one crucial battleground, the serve, and specifically, the vulnerability of the serve. If you look at the raw data, both players landed an almost identical percentage of first serves. Alexandra Eala put 66% of her first serves into play. Zeynep Sönmez put 67% of her first serves into play. On paper, that looks like parity. That looks like two players with equal consistency. But in tennis, consistency is nothing without efficacy. It is not enough to just land the ball in the box. You have to do something with it. And this is where the match was won and lost. When Alexandra Eala landed her first serve, she won 64% of those points. That is a solid tour-level number. It's not earth-shattering. She's not serving like prime Serena Williams, but it is solid. It means that when she starts the point on her terms, she is keeping the advantage nearly 2/3 of the time. Now contrast that with Sönmez. When the Turkish player landed her first serve, remember she landed them at a higher rate, 67%. She only won 48% of the points. Let that sink in for a moment. 48%. That is a catastrophic number for a server at this level. It means that even when Sönmez did everything right, even when she executed her mechanics and landed her first serve, she was still statistically more likely to lose the point than to win it. That single statistic destroys a game plan. It puts immense psychological pressure on the server because you feel like you have no shield. You feel naked on the baseline. Every time you step up to the line, you know that the person on the other side is not just neutralizing you, they are hunting you. And Alexandra Eala was hunting yesterday. The stats show she generated 12 breakpoint opportunities. 12. That is a relentless amount of pressure to apply in a two-set match. It means constantly knocking on the door. She wasn't just waiting for errors, she was forcing the issue, stepping inside the baseline and taking time away from Sonmez. And of those 12 opportunities, she converted 6. That is a 50% conversion rate. In the high-stakes world of WTA tennis, converting half of your break points is a recipe for dominance. It shows mental fortitude. It shows that when the moment came to twist the knife, Eala didn't hesitate. Let's talk about the ace count because it reinforces this idea of efficacy over consistency. Eala hit 2 aces. Sonmez hit 0. Now, 2 aces might not sound like a lot. We aren't watching Isner versus Mahut here. But in a match of fine margins, those 2 aces are free points. They are moments of rest. They are morale boosters. Sonmez getting 0 aces means she had to work for every single point she won. There were no gifts. There were no easy exits from difficult service games. She had to grind through every rally, and over the course of an hour and a half, that physical and mental tax adds up. It drains the legs, and it clouds the decision-making, and we saw that fatigue manifest. Now, let's address the double faults. Eala had 4 double faults, while Sonmez had only 1. Usually, a higher double fault count is a bad sign. It suggests nerves or a technical breakdown. But in this context, I would argue Eala's double faults were actually a byproduct of necessary aggression. She knew she could not just roll the ball in. She knew she had to go for the lines. She had to push the envelope on her second serve to prevent Sonmez from attacking. So those 4 errors were productive errors in a sense. They were the cost of doing business. Sonmez's single double fault suggests she was playing it safer, perhaps too safe, rolling the serve in just to get the point started, only to be punished by Eala's ground strokes immediately after. The returning numbers for Eala are frankly spectacular. She won 35 receiving points compared to Sonmez's 28. But the gap feels wider when you watch the flow of the match. Eala's ability to neutralize the Sonmez serve was the key that unlocked this victory. We know Sonmez likes to play aggressive baseline tennis. She showed that in Melbourne when she upset seeded players. She likes to dictate, but you cannot dictate if you are on your back foot from the very first ball. Eala's returns were deep. They were central when they needed to be to take away the angle, and they were sharp when Sonmez left the door open. Let's dissect the sets. 6-4 in the first. That is a 1-break set. That is tight. That is a set decided by maybe 3 or 4 swings of the racket. It tells us that Sonmez was there, she was competing, she was finding her range. But when it got to 4-4 or 4-5, that is when the win percentage on first serve differential kicks in. That is when Eala could rely on her delivery to get a cheap point, and Sonmez could not. The mental fortitude of Eala to close out that first set 6-4 cannot be overstated. We have seen young players, Eala included, get tight when serving for sets. We have seen them let opponents back in. But yesterday, she slammed the door. Then we moved to the second set, 6-3. This is where the Sonmez belief system likely took a hit. She looks at the scoreboard, she looks at her stats, and she realizes she is winning less than half of her own service points. That is a demoralizing realization. Eala, sensing blood, stepped on the gas. The max games won in a row stat shows Eala won 4 games consecutively at 1 point. That is the kill shot. That is a run that takes a score from a competitive 2-2 or 3-3 and stretches it out to a commanding lead. When you string 4 games together at this level, you aren't just winning, you are breaking the opponent's spirit. We also have to look at the total points won. 71 for Eala versus 56 for Sonmez. That is a spread of 15 points in a 2-set match. A 15-point margin is significant. It's not a blowout. It's not 6-0, 6-0. But it is decisive. It shows that Eala was the better player in every metric that mattered. She was better on serve, she was better on return, and she was better in the clutch moments. And let's not forget the context of the calendar. Eala is coming off that emotional high of the SEA Games in Thailand. Playing for your country, competing at that level, that does something to a player's confidence. It solidifies your identity. You walk a little taller. You trust your shots a little more. Sonmez, conversely, is coming off a career-best run in Australia. Sometimes, after a big breakthrough, there is a hangover. There is a dip in intensity. It is incredibly difficult to sustain that peak level week after week. It is possible that Sonmez arrived in Abu Dhabi just a fraction off her best, physically or perhaps emotionally drained from the spotlight of her historic Turkish achievement. Eala, hungry to prove that her form translates to the WTA Tour, was perfectly positioned to exploit that. The surface in Abu Dhabi is an outdoor hardcourt. It plays fairly fast, but the desert air can make the ball fly a bit. Control is paramount. Eala's game, which is built around that lefty spin and heavy forehand, is well suited to these conditions. She can use the spin to control the ball in the thin air, keeping it in the court while still generating pace. Sonmez, who hits a flatter ball, might have struggled more with control, leading to those lower win percentages on serve. This was a professional, workmanlike performance from Alexandra Eala. She didn't need to play the match of her life. She didn't need to hit 50 winners. She just needed to be solid, exploit the weakness in Sonmez's serve, and execute on the break points. And she did exactly that, 6-4, 6-3. A scoreline that says, I am here, I am focused, and I am ready for the next challenge. So what does this actually mean? Why should we as tennis fans care about a round of 32 match in February? We care because this victory is a microcosm of the evolution of Alexandra Eala. For years, we have spoken about her potential. We have spoken about her junior Grand Slam titles. We have spoken about her being a Rafael Nadal Academy graduate, but potential is a dangerous word in sports. Potential is just a promise that hasn't been kept yet. Matches like this, beating a top 80 caliber player like Sonmez, who is in the form of her life, are the moments where potential turns into reality. This win pushes Eala into the round of 16. It defends points. It adds points. It inches her closer to that elusive top 40 ranking, which is a gateway to direct entry into the biggest tournaments without needing qualifiers. It is the gateway to being seeded. Every win at a WTA 500 event is worth its weight in gold. And look at who might be waiting for her. The draw could open up. She has momentum. She has the conditions that suit her game. But more than the ranking points, it is the statement she sends to the locker room. The tour is a small place. Players talk, coaches watch. When you beat a player like Sonmez 6-4, 6-3, you send a message that you are not a junior anymore. You are not a prospect. You are a contender. You are a dangerous floater that no seed wants to see in their section. For Zeynep Sonmez, this is a speed bump, not a roadblock. She is having a phenomenal season. One loss to a high-quality opponent like Eala does not erase what she did in Melbourne. She will learn from this. She will look at that 48% first serve win rate, and she will go to the practice courts and work on her placement. She will work on her +1 shot. She is arguably the best player in Turkish tennis history right now, and she has the game to bounce back. This rivalry between the Philippines and Turkey is likely one we will see again. These are two players on the rise, and their paths will cross many more times in the next decade. But today belongs to Alexandra Eala. Today belongs to the tactical discipline, the lefty forehand, and the clutch breakpoint conversion. She walked into the stadium in Abu Dhabi with a job to do, and she punched out with a straight sets victory. No drama, no 3-set roller coasters, just business. And sometimes that is the most exciting thing of all, watching a young athlete mature into a professional who knows how to win. As we look ahead to the next round, keep your eyes on Eala's serve stats. If she can maintain that 64% to 66% win rate on her first serve against higher-ranked opponents, she is going to be a problem for anyone in this draw. The Abu Dhabi Open is just heating up, and thanks to this performance, the Philippine flag is flying high into the round of 16. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive. We didn't just look at the score, we lived the match. From the baseline battles to the service box struggles, this was the story of Eala versus Sonmez. I'll see you in the next one where we will break down the next chapter of this incredible season.